Welcome to AlphaMountWorld's first online video tutorial where we show you how to process a raw image using Sony's supplied Image Data Converter and Image Data Lightbox software. First you need to open your raw image, and there are two ways of doing this. Either opening it from within Image Data Converter or by using Image Data Lightbox, the software we shall use in this tutorial. When you launch Image Data Lightbox, you're prompted with the following window. This gives you the option to open a folder of images, an individual image file, or a previous collection file. We'll choose to open a folder of images. You are prompted to navigate to the folder of images you wish to open. When you've found them, click on the Open button. Image Data Lightbox displays the thumbnail images down the left-hand side of your screen. You can use this scroll bar to find the particular image you wish to open. When you've found your image, the preview in the middle of the screen will refresh. You can choose to display the thumbnail images on the bottom of the screen if you prefer. Personally, I like them down the left-hand side because this allows for a bigger preview image. When you found an image you wish to open, click on the highlighted RAW button and it will launch Image Data Converter. Image Data Converter is split into 6 main areas. There's a toolbar along the top of the screen, a preview of your photograph, and then 4 adjustment panels. Let's take a look at the adjustments on offer and how each of these can help improve your image. The first adjustment panel gives you options for white balance, hue and saturation. The second adjustment panel gives you options for exposure value adjustment, contrast, dynamic range optimizer and display control settings. The third adjustment panel gives you options for creative style, highlight color distortion reduction, sharpness, noise reduction and picture effect settings. The fourth adjustment panel is a tone curve setting, and this is very similar to the curves provided within Adobe Photoshop. If you've ever used Photoshop, then this should be familiar to you. Let's take a look at improving our image by using the settings on offer. To change the white balance, there's a choice of 5 options. Either the camera setting, a preset which includes auto, daylight, cloudy, shade, fluorescent, tungsten and flash options, each of which is tunable with the following slider. Sliding to the right will increase warmth and sliding to the left will decrease warmth. Beneath that you have the option for color temperature. Using this slider and dragging it to the right you'll increase the warmth, and dragging it to the left you'll cool an image. Beneath that there's the option to specify a grey point. This can be useful if you have a tricky scene and you want to ensure that a particular element is correctly white balanced. Beneath that there's a colour correction slider, and this controls the amount of magenta and green within your image. Sliding to the right increases the magenta bias, and sliding to the left increases the green cyan bias. We'll leave that set to 0. The way I like to change the white balance on my image is by using the colour temperature slider. For this particular image, a setting of about 5400 Kelvin should be spot on. To change the hue of an image you can use the following slider. Dragging it to the right increases the greens in an image, and dragging it to the left increases the magenta and reds in an image. We'll leave that set to 0. If you want to increase the saturation of an image, drag the slider to the right. If you want to decrease the saturation, slide it to the left. On this image, I reckon a setting of about +13 will be perfect. If your image is not correctly exposed, then you can use the exposure value adjustment to add up to plus or minus of 2 stops. If you had an underexposed image, drag the slider to the right and this will increase the brightness, and if you have an overexposed image, drag it to the left and this will decrease the brightness and allow you to hold on to detail in the highlights. This image is fine without any adjustment, so we'll leave it set to 0. To increase the contrast of an image there is a slider provided. Sliding to the right will increase the contrast, and sliding to the left will decrease the contrast. We're going to use the tone curve to increase the contrast in this image as it provides a greater level of control. Sony's alpha cameras come with a dynamic range optimizer function, and this is mimicked with inside Image Data Converter, although it is not as sophisticated. The automatic setting will allow the computers to try and balance the image, allowing for highlights and shadows. If you have a particularly challenging scene, then choosing manual will give you individual control over the highlight and shadow adjustments. This particular image doesn't need any adjustments, so we'll leave it set to off. The display control settings give you options over clipped highlights, clipped shadows, out of gamut colours, and the ability to show the 16:9 image ratio area. If we tick the clipped highlights, you can see that nothing changes. This means that there are no clipped highlights within this image. If we choose to display the clipped shadows, you'll see that there are indeed some clipped shadows within the darkest parts of this image. For this particular photo it is not a problem, but if it was, you could remedy it by either backing off the contrast or by increasing the exposure value. If you are having problems printing your image, you can choose to display any out of gamut colours. If you have lots of out of gamut colours in your image, you could then try decreasing the saturation to bring them back in gamut. The last option under display control is to show the 16:9 image area. When you tick this, you will get a mask down the left and right hand side of your images, the left hand side and the right hand side. This doesn't actually crop your image, but it serves more as a visual gauge. We'll leave this turned off. On the third adjustments panel we have options for creative style, and these are a direct replacement for the ones within the Alpha cameras. There's the options for standard, vivid, Adobe RGB, portrait, landscape and night view. For this particular image, vivid should work really well. When you click on the vivid option, you get a warning box. This says that changing the creative style resets all settings with the exception of the tone curve, and are you sure you wish to continue? If I move this box to the side, keep an eye on the colour temperature and saturation settings, as when I click yes, these will restore to factory default. The image will preview and you can see the effect that choosing the vivid creative style has on the photo. Let's go back and change the colour temperature back down to 5400 Kelvin and increase the saturation back up to +13. We can leave highlight colour distortion reduction set to standard, along with sharpening set to 0. I prefer to do my sharpening in an additional program. If the image was particularly noisy, then you have the option of reducing noise. You can either do this automatically by ticking this button, or have manual control over it, and then you have control over the amount of noise reduction. Dragging it to the right increases the noise reduction, and dragging it to the left decreases the noise reduction. Beneath the amount slider, there is the option of choosing how to reduce colour noise and edge noise. This photo was shot at ISO 100, so therefore does not need any noise reduction. We'll leave this turned off. The last option on the adjustment palette 3 is the picture effect setting. This gives you control over sepia, black and white, solarize and negative effects. We'll leave this turned off. To finish this image off, we'll tweak the tone curve. I find a slight S shape can help brighten the highlights and boost the shadows. Click on the tone curve and drag gently up to brighten the highlights, and click and drag down gently to boost the shadows. I think this image is looking pretty good and wouldn't do any further adjustments to it. There are then 3 further options. You can choose to save your photo, you can choose to print your photo, or you can choose to open your photo in an additional package such as Photoshop Elements or Photoshop if you have those installed on your computer. We'll choose saving the image and I shall show you how this is done. If you choose Save As, you get options over where the image is saved, what it's called, and the file type. File type gives you the option of TIFF files, JPEG, or ARW files. We'll leave it set to TIFF. You have the option of choosing the colour space, which includes sRGB, Adobe RGB and wide gamut RGB. We'll choose Adobe RGB. You also have the option over bit depth with 8-bit and 16-bit provided. For ultimate quality, we'll leave it set to 16 bits. The last option is slightly interesting, and this gives you the option over saving the entire image or saving the 16:9 area of the image. We'll leave this set to the entire image. All that's left to do is to click save, and the program will save your photo to the chosen location. Thank you for watching.